The easiest way I think to get started is just to integrate mindfulness into things that you're already doing anyhow. You don't have to add anything to your schedule. So like things like having a snack or eating food. You all eat every day, right? Brushing your teeth. Hopefully you all brush your teeth at least once a day. Washing your hands. So this will give us a chance to change posture. So let's actually do mindfulness training while washing the hands. So if you don't mind, we're going to simulate this while standing up. And this will give you a break from sitting for a minute here. Change of posture, hopefully that's helpful. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I mean, I'm not going to be offended if you want to keep sitting, but you might enjoy standing for a moment. Yeah. Now, how does washing the hands normally go for most of you, would you say? Are you really present with washing the hands, or are you thinking about everything in the world other than washing your hands? Is that pretty fair to say that 95% of the time, roughly, you're thinking about anything other than washing your hands? Is that fair? Okay. So here's an opportunity to break that habit, right? So this is what mindfulness, or washing the hands in mindfulness is like. So instead of just kind of going through it, you're thinking about everything, you're not really paying attention, you could just stop for a moment. And again, just mentally note, I'm standing here about to wash the hands. And boom, right there, you've just awakened. You've just kind of snapped yourself out of that constant thought stream. And then what we're going to do, it's generally recommended you wash your hands for about 30 seconds. So we'll just do that together. So let's just mentally note, about to wash the hands. And then just simulate like you're putting a little soap on your hands. And what I'd like you to do is just simulate washing, but now really be curious about it. Pretend like you're a 3-year-old and you're just super curious about what does it feel like to wash the hands. You might notice what your hands feel like. You might notice the sound that you're hearing. You might notice what your feet feel like on the ground. You might notice, wow, this is actually kind of relaxing. It's like a hand massage. I think that's been about 30 seconds. So would you say that that is markedly different than how you normally wash your hands? So here's just one little area in your daily life where you can just start breaking that bad habit of always being in there identified with thinking and waking up to mindfulness. So thank you for playing along. Feel free to sit down. So here's what I suggest. Step 1 for integrating mindfulness into your daily life is make a list of all the things that you are going to do anyhow every single day, like washing your hands, brushing your teeth, eating foods, commuting to work, walking from your car to your office, or just walking in general. I've reflected on my life. I've asked several other people to do this. I think the average for most people, we're talking about 2 hours of your day here, roughly. So make a list of all these things that you're going to do anyhow, where people usually aren't demanding your attention. And it doesn't matter what order they're in, but what I would suggest is for a week, pick one of those things. It could be even washing the hands, since we've already done that as a practical app. And for 1 week, commit to yourself that I'm going to wash my hands in mindfulness every time that I wash my hands this week. And it might even require you, because again, the hard part here is just remembering. Once you remember to do it, it's so easy, right? You're just being curious about the experience. And of course, thoughts might come up and they might distract you while you're washing. It's totally fine. You just recognize that there's thinking and go right back to being curious about the experience of washing your hands. So the hard part is actually remembering. So what you might want to do is have some reminder, every single day or a couple times a day, like, hey, every time you wash your hands, remember to do it in mindfulness this week. Okay, so at home, it's really easy. Like brushing your teeth, you could literally put a sticky note next to your toothbrush with a smiley face. Like, hey, remember to do this in mindfulness. At the end of 1 week, what I suggest is now that first activity will be essentially a new habit for you. If you do it every single time, it should be pretty much a habit. At the end of that week, add a second activity. So let's say week 1 was washing your hands. Maybe the week 2 could be drinking water. So now you wash hands, and every time you drink, whether it's water or coffee or anything, you do it in mindfulness, which is to say you pause for a moment and then really be curious about what does the cup feel like as it touches my lips? What does the liquid feel like? Would you agree with me that anything that you do that you're fully present for, you're going to do better than when you're trying to multitask or thinking about different things?
Quicker.
And faster. It'd be done more efficiently, and it'll be done better if you just do one thing and you're fully present with that one thing. And there's plenty of research on this. So here's a way to think about this. Let's say you picked one of your activities is washing the dishes. I'm going to steal a quote from one of my favorite teachers, a man named Thich Nhat Hanh. And he would use, he's not alive anymore, but he always used to teach things like, there's two ways that you can wash the dishes. One is to have clean dishes. The other is just to enjoy washing the dishes. Guess what happens either way? You get clean dishes. At the end of one, you're kind of a stress ball. At the end of the other, you actually enjoyed washing the dishes. In fact, coming back to this is what reminded me of it, I would dare say you're probably going to have cleaner dishes because you're really present with it. You don't make as many errors. You don't miss as many spots. And so that kind of brings me to, so you kind of get where I'm going with this, right? Each week you continue with the activities that you had already done, and then you add another. Think about where we're going here. In 12 weeks, you're going to have 12 activities during your day that are starting to break you out of this habit, and mindfulness is going to start to become a new habit for you, where you'll start to have this objective self-awareness in more and more situations. Now, I humbly suggest that this might be the ultimate paradigm shift in your life. And here's why I say that. Let's think about doing all these activities the way that we normally do. And if we're truly honest, we're usually pretty distracted. We're rushing to get through these activities on our list so we can get them over with, so we can get on to what's important or exciting, like you're rushing through the dishes so you can go watch the football game or something like that. And so as a result, we're continuing to reinforce a bad habit of being identified with our thinking. You're probably building up anxiety in your body while you're doing that. And perhaps the worst part of this is you're simply not there. You're not living that moment of your life. And who knows if the next moment's coming? The next moment is not promised to any one of us in this room. Wouldn't it be a shame if this was our last 5 minutes and we're all lost in thought about what happened yesterday? So, not to end on the downside, there's a really positive side to this, which is why I think this is the ultimate paradigm shift. What happens, as simple as this move sounds, of just starting to integrate mindfulness training into these simple activities like washing your hands and brushing your teeth, all of those things are completely flipped. So for one, you're not rushing through it to get it over with, you're present with it, and as a result, you might notice your anxiety levels go down a little bit, which makes you more effective at whatever you're going to do next. You're fully present with what you're doing, so it's probably a better outcome. Also, you are now developing a new and extremely, in fact, as we all agreed on, I think, the most important skill we can develop, both personally and professionally. We are systematically training to improve our self-awareness. And again, perhaps most important is that we are actually living that moment of our lives. So instead of skipping over 2 hours of our day like we normally do, that's 2 hours a day that we've just probably thrown away 95% of that time in our lives. We get that time back. And you might find that just like a 3-year-old does, washing your hands is pretty enjoyable. 3-year-old enjoys that. They enjoy brushing their teeth. They enjoy all these little things that we skip over. To them, that's just as good as watching a great movie. There's no difference. Now, I also recommend, in addition to just all these things, these activities while we're in motion, including walking and things like that, I also recommend that we take some time to sit still. And I know that I promised that you can integrate mindfulness without having to add anything to your schedule, and you can. Think of all the times when you're just sitting still, waiting for something, whether it's, or even standing still, like at the grocery line at the grocery store, or sitting and waiting in traffic. Sitting and waiting for a meeting to begin. Here's a perfect example. In fact, I'm going to skip a slide here. What do most people do, and I'm not going to call you out, what do most people that you see doing, what do most people do, what do you see them doing while they're waiting for something? That's the first thing that comes out, right? Talk about the complete antithesis of developing mindfulness. Because what most people are doing is they're anxious, like they're looking for the next email, looking for the next text, they're looking for the next, please, somebody tell me I'm important, right? And how effective, or how present do you think you're going to be with the next person that you interact with when you've just sucked yourself into this anxious, anxiety-provoking madness of your phone. Now, I'm not saying, in fact, we're going to talk about how to use this mindfully in a second. I'm not saying you have to get rid of these things, and you can definitely use them mindfully. What I'm suggesting here is that if you have 3 minutes waiting for a client to show up at one of your properties, put your phone away and just sit and check in with your body, the exercise that we're going to do here in a moment. And what you'll find is that now you show up really present with somebody. You're going to find your interactions with people improving little by little every time. You're going to find people respond to you better because they feel cared for by you when you're present with them. Right? So this is just a little way that is actually can make a huge impact. It's just that one habit of, instead of always, here's one way you can do this constructively, is to say, create like a limit on how often you check your phone. Because I think, I don't remember, have any of you seen the study on this? I know I've read it, but I don't remember the numbers, so I'm not just going to make something up. But I want to say it's something like about a time a minute is what most people check their cell phones in an hour. It's like 60 times an hour. Do we really need to do that, my friends? I mean, what's going to happen in a minute, you know? Maybe once every 30 minutes, maybe once an hour, whatever you think actually works for your productivity, for your schedule. But the idea is here is to kind of break ourselves from that habit, is to say, look, I'm not going to let myself check this thing more than once every 30 minutes or once every 60. And then you can do it mindfully, which, we'll talk about that now. And then we'll do the stillness practice here. But you can actually do it with your phone out, for those of you who have them out. I see a couple out right now. Or you can just pretend. But how most of the time when we're doing it is, it feels like we're being pulled by the device, doesn't it? It feels like this thing's in control, and it's like, I got to check to see what somebody wants from me. I got to check to see if anybody loves me. It's like, I've got to. That's the energy we feel, right? So I think how this can change is, what happens if you just pick up your device? You can go ahead if you have it out, or just use your hand. What does it feel like in your hand? So before you engage with the device, I'd like you to just mentally note, I'm about to use my cell phone. Just note that in your mind. And then, what does it actually feel like in your hand? Now, if you touch the screen, like really be curious about, what does your finger feel like on the screen? Maybe even notice what your feet feel like on the ground, or what your body feels like sitting in the seat. And then go ahead and interact with it. Let's see if you have a text or one email or something. Go ahead, and if you have your phone out, feel free to do one thing. Try doing it in mindfulness like that. Try not to lose awareness of what the phone feels like in your hand. Try not to lose awareness of what your body feels like sitting in the chair. Is that markedly different than how we normally use a device, would you say? Do you like that better? Does it feel more calming and not like anxiety-provoking? So I'm not saying you have to do this. I would just say play around with it. Notice the difference. Notice the difference between using your device where your device is in charge of you, and using your device when you're fully present and it's another mindfulness exercise. This can actually be part of your practice. Okay, so let's come back to the development of wisdom. So here's the reason why, other than just being present with whatever you're going to do next, taking some time to be still. So if you want to get extra credit and you want to technically add something to your schedule, I would still say this is not really adding something to your schedule. Pick something that you know is not good for you, like the extra 30 minutes of TV that you watch before bedtime, or whatever that is for you. And let's just say, just take 5 minutes of it and see if you can commit to sitting still, developing wisdom for 5 minutes a day. Even if it's just 1 minute, try with that. Okay, so for those of you who want extra credit, you are adding something technically to your schedule, but if you do it by removing something you know is not good for you, it's a net win, right, for sure. Now here's why it's important to take some time to sit still. Because although you are subtly developing this mindfulness muscle during activities, and you are developing some wisdom about your relationship to thought, where it develops much more quickly is if you take time to sit still. Because if you're sitting still and you're not interacting with the world, you're not having to worry about, am I going to bump into something? You know, am I going to fall over? Or what? You're just sitting there. There's nothing you have to do. And the wisdom that can develop is, I think, the most important wisdom that there is to develop in this world, which is the truth that you are not your thinking. Now, intellectually, we all know this, right? You know that you're not your thinking. Thinking is just something that happens. You can be aware of it By definition, it's not you. It's just like your finger. You can look at your finger. Somebody cuts off your finger and throws it on the floor. You still exist, right? You're still there. Same thing happens with thinking. In fact, you can do a little thought experiment with this. I'd like you to imagine for a moment, you're sitting still, and I know this might sound totally unreasonable, but let's just say it's possible. You're sitting still and your mind is completely empty of thought. There's no inner voice, there's no dialogue, there's no images, it's just pure perception of what's happening, empty mind. Okay, now let's say a thought comes up, and let's just say it's about the fine 16 craft beers that they have here, I think you said. And you're thinking, wow, that sounds pretty good to me after this session. I'm going to go loosen up with a craft beer or something. And then that thought goes away, and now it's empty mind again. What does that tell you about your relationship to thinking? Well, here's a question for you. Did you exist when your mind was completely empty of thought? You were there, right? Were you there when the thought came up? Yep. And then were you there when it went away? You still exist, right? So is that thought you? No, it's something, it's essentially like a light bulb that you can just observe in consciousness, and then when you can see it go away and it disappears, and it may not come back ever. It may come back tomorrow, it may not ever come back. Now again, intellectually we all know this, right? But do we live that way? Heck no, we're in there talking to ourselves. Sometimes there's like 3 of us in there, right? Like, I can't believe you did that. No, I can't believe you did that. Oh yeah, you should have done this. You know, it's like, it can be pretty crazy in there, right? So we have this dialogue that's just always going, and we really identify with that as being me. And so with practice, you can start to see that that's just simply not the case. That thought experiment that we just did, this becomes your experience every time you engage in mindfulness. You start to see through your own experience, thoughts are just objects that arise and pass away in the mind. They're not me, they don't have to control me. And what happens is this wisdom is what makes it so that eventually mindful self-awareness just becomes effortless. Like, you don't have to try to be aware, right? In fact, if I just ask you right now, just mentally note in your mind, sitting here doing nothing, you were perfectly aware, and you were not distracted by thinking, right? You did not have to try to do anything. In fact, you just commanded yourself to do nothing. That's as mindful as you're ever going to get, probably. That's how easy it is, or simple it is. Now, as we all know, it's not easy, because habitually we're just going to go right back to thinking. So let's play around with this a little bit in actual exercise. We'll do some sitting still practice, so you get a taste of what it's like, and then we'll have some discussion about it, answer any questions that you have about it. I think I'm going to get a quick drink to make sure I narrate with proper diction. Feel free to join me if you like. Mine's non-alcoholic, but I won't judge you if you're an early starter or something.